Okay, very good morning all. Today I am going to explain about Myhill-Nerode theorem. This Myhill-Nerode theorem is used to minimize the DFA, and we also use this Myhill-Nerode theorem to prove that certain languages are regular or not, and we also use this Myhill-Nerode theorem to minimize the DFA. Actually, why we have to learn that why should we minimize the DFA? That we have to minimize the DFA because if the number of states are increases, then the time complexity will also increase. So the main problem is that if the number of states increases, then time and space complexity will also increase. So then definitely we need to find out an equivalent minimized DFA. So this will also increases. So then the solution for this is to we have to find out an equivalent minimized DFA, So this equivalent minimized DFA we can find out by using this Myhill-Nerode theorem. Let us see that how we can use this Myhill-Nerode theorem to minimize the DFA. So then let us take one example. So this is that DFA we have. So we can say this is also a complex DFA because it has some 6 states, and there are 3 final states and 3 non-final states. So now we have to start this Myhill-Nerode theorem first by identifying the set of final states and set of non-final states. Now what are the final states in this? The final states are Q1, Q2, Q5, and non-final states are Q0, Q0, Q3 and Q4. So we have some set of final states and some set of non-final states. So now we need to make a pair. In the first step we need to make a pair where one state should be final and another state should be non-final. How the pair should be like? Where one state should be final and another should be non-final. That is how we have to make some pairs. So now what are the pairs that we can make from this? But before that we have to first write the transition table for this. Now this is the transition table for the above DFA, which is given. So now this we have to use this transition table. So in our next steps wherever it is required. Right. So now we have to first draw this grid table for this DFA. So now here we have Q0 to Q5. We have to write them in horizontal direction and in vertical direction. So now what did I say? We have to first make a pair where one state should be final and another state should be non-final. So starting from Q0, how we can write? Q0 can be paired up with what? Q0 can be paired up with Q1. Why? Because Q0 can be paired up with Q1 because Q0 is non-final and Q1 is final. And next Q0 can also be paired up with what? Q0 can also be paired up with Q2, and Q0 can also be paired up with what? Q5. Right? Why? Because Q0 is non-final, so it can be paired up with what? Some final states. So now we have to go to that grid table. So where we have to write Q0 paired up with Q1, Q2 and Q5. That is how we have to mark the pairs for the Q0. So similarly, let us go back to this. Now we have to write about a Q1. So now Q0 is over. Now I am writing about a Q1. So now what is Q1? For Q1 can be paired up with what? Q1 is final state. It can be paired up with what? Non-final. So Q0, Q1, Q0, Q1, and next Q1 can be paired up with Q3. Q1 can be paired up with what? Q4. Because Q1 is final state, it can be paired up with what? Non-final states. So that is Q1 Q0, Q1 Q3, Q1 Q4. Let us see this. Q1 can be paired up with Q1 Q0. That is already done. Q0 Q1 is done. Q1 Q3. So next one is Q1 Q3 and Q1 Q4. We have to mark them. So next, let us go back to the next one. That is what? So now Q1 also over. So next state is at Q2. Now we have to write the pairs for the Q2 state. What is Q2? The nature of Q2 is final state. So Q2 can be paired up with what? Non-final states. Q0, Q2, Q2 Q3, Q2 Q4. Already Q0 Q2 already over. Now we have to mark that what Q2 Q3 and Q2 Q4. Let us go to that Q2 column. So in that Q2 Q3, Q2 Q4 we have to mark them, right? So next, the next state is Q3. Now we have to write the pairs for the Q3. So the next one is Q3. So now Q3 is what? Non-final state. It can paired up with what? Final states. Those are Q1 Q3, Q2 Q3 and Q3 Q5. Already Q1 Q3 and Q2 Q3 is over. Next one is Q3 Q5. Now we have to go to the Q3, and in that Q3 Q5 we have to mark it. So next Q4. Now Q4 we have to write Q4. For this Q4, Q4 is what? Non-final state. It can be paired up with final states. That is Q1 Q4, Q2 Q4, Q4 Q5. Already Q1 Q4 and Q2 Q4 over. Now we have to mark only Q4 Q5. In the Q4 column we have to mark this Q4 Q5, right? These are all marked pairs. These are all called as marked pairs, right? What are the marked pairs? Now we have got, for the Q0 column we have got Q0 Q1, Q0 Q1, Q0 Q2 and Q0 Q5. In the Q1 column what we have got? Q1 Q3 and Q1 Q4. And in the Q2 column what we have got? Q2 Q3, Q2 Q4. And in the Q3 column what we have got? Q3 Q5. And in the Q4 column what we have got? Q4 Q5. These are only the marked pairs, right? So Q4 Q5, these are only the marked pairs we have got. So next, see, that is how we have get that this table. We have got some marked pairs. Now what we need to do in the next step, still there are some unmarked pairs. What are the unmarked pairs? Now the pairs which are unchecked in this grid box, those are unmarked pairs. Now on the unmarked pairs are Q0 Q3, Q0 Q4 in the Q0 column. Next in the Q1 column we have got Q1 Q2 and Q1 Q5. Next in the Q2 column we have got Q2 Q5. Next in the Q3 column we have got Q3 Q4, right? So these are some 6 unmarked pairs we have. So in the next step we have to make them also as marked. We have to try to make them as marked pairs, right? For this we have to apply this property, right? What is that property? If QA of X, if there is if you take any unmarked pair QA QB, if this is unmarked, pair, so then for some input X, now the property is that if QA of X is QC and QB comma X is QD, if this QC comma QD is marked pair, if this QC comma QD is marked pair, then make QA comma QB also as marked, right? That is the property we have to follow. So first we are taking some unmarked pair. What is that unmarked pair we are taking? So QA QB is unmarked pair that we are taking, right? So now the first unmarked pair, what are the unmarked pairs that we have noted? Q0 Q3. So now Q0 Q3 as QA QB, right? So I am explaining this here. So the first one is Q0 Q3, Q0 Q3. This is acts as QA QB. Now we have to first check what is delta of q0 comma 0 and delta of q3 comma 0. What is delta of q0 comma 0 in the table? If you see in the transition table, so now in the transition table, delta of q0 comma 0 is q1, delta of q3 comma 0 is q1, delta of q3 comma 0 is q5. Similarly, delta of q0 comma 1 is q2, delta of q3 comma 1 is q5. So here QC QD is q1 q5, here QC QD is q2 q5. Now let us check, is this q1 q5 and q2 q5 are marked or not. q1 q5 is marked, q2 q5 is not marked. See, what is that? q0 to 0 is q1 and q3 to 0 is q5. We have taken what? q0 q3. So q0 to 0, q3 to 0. q0 to 0 is q1, q3 to 0 is q5, right? So now we have taken this q3 q0, we have got q1, q5 and q1. So check if the pair q5 q1 is marked, and no, it is not marked. So similarly, so we have to check the pair q5 q2. So hence we cannot mark the pair q3 q0 because that q1 q5 is not marked. q1 q5 is not marked. See this, q1 q5 is not marked, so we cannot make this q0 q3 as marked. See in this table, q1 q5. So in the grid table, if you see, q1 q5 is not marked, so it is not marked, so we cannot make this q0 q3 as marked. And suppose if you see another one, what is it, another one we get q2 q5. Now in this grid table, this q2 q5 also not marked, so you cannot make this q0 q3 as marked, so still it is unmarked only. So similarly, now we have to check another one. Now let us check another one. What is that another unmarked pair that we have got? So that another unmarked pair is that q0 q4. Let us take that q0 q4, delta of q0 0, delta of q4 0, delta of q4 0. Similarly, delta of q0 1, delta of q4 1. What is delta of q0 0? It is q1. Delta of q4 0 is q5. Delta, it is q1 q5 pair. Now what is q0 to 1? It is q2, and q4 to 1 is q5. So it is q2 q5. So now we already seen q1 q5 and q2 q5 are what? Still unmarked. q1 q5 and q2 q5, these two are still unmarked. So when these two are unmarked, we cannot make this q0 q4 as unmarked, still it is also unmarked. Okay, so next unmarked pair is what? q1 q2. Let us check that q1 q2. Now q1 q2, how we are checking? Delta of q1, delta of q1 to 0, delta of q2 to 0, delta of q1 to 1, delta of q2 to 1. What is delta of q1 to 0? q1 to 0 is q3, q2 to 0 is what? q4. Similarly, q1 to 1 is q4, q2 to 1 is q3. So that is both are same, both are what? q3 q4 pair. Let us check whether q3 q4 is marked or not. In the q3 column, q3 q4 is still unmarked, so we cannot make q1 q2 as marked, still it is what? Unmarked only, right? So next unmarked pair is q1 q5. Let us take q1 q5. Delta of q1 q5 we have to check. Delta of q1 to 0, delta of q5 to 0. Similarly, delta of q1 to 1, delta of q5 to 1. Right, delta of q1 to 0. What is q1 to 0? q1 to 0 is q3. q5 to 0 is q5. q1 to 1 is q4. q5 to 1 is q5. q4, q5. That is q3, q5, q4, q5. There are two pairs we have got, q3, q5, q4, q5. q3, q5. Now, if you see q3, q5, yes, it is marked pair. It is marked. So we can make what? That q1, q5 as marked now. We can make this q1, q5 now as marked pair, right? So now this newly marked pair I am writing with this double tick mark. Okay, because q3, q5 is marked and q4, q5 also marked. That's why I made this as marked. So next unmarked pair in the list is what? q1, q5 is, now q1, q5 is became what? Marked. Now it became marked, right? So next q2, q5, we have to check q2, q5. Next q2, q5. q2, q5. Now delta of q2 to 0, delta of q5 to 0. Similarly, delta of q2 to 1, delta of q5 to 1. Delta of q2 to 0 is what? q4. q5 to 0 is q5. q2 to 1 is q3 and it is q5. So it is q4, q5 or q3, q5. You can take any. If any of them is marked, then you can make this q2, q5 as marked. See, q4, q5 is marked, q3, q5 also marked. So we can make q2, q5 also as what? Marked. So now I can make this as marked. Now this is also marked now, right? So next q3, q5. We have to check q3, q5. Next unmarked pair is q2, q5 also now marked. Next q3, q4. We have to take q3, q4. Let's go to q3, q4. q3, q4, delta of q3 to 0, delta of q4 to 0. Similarly, delta of q3 to 1 and delta of q4 to 1. Delta of q3 to 0 is what? q5. Delta of q4 to 0 is q5. Delta of q3 to 1 is q5 and it is q5. What is q5, q5, q5? q5 is what? Unmarked. So q3, q4 is still unmarked. So q3, q4 is still unmarked, right? So then now it is still unmarked. Now let us go back to this. Now what are the new marked pairs we have got? Now after this step, that new marked pairs, right? Let us write that new marked pairs. Here we have got. Now along with this, new marked pairs are the double ticks where you can see q1, q5 and q2, q5. These are the newly marked pairs. Now these are what? New QC QDs. This is QC QD and this is another QC QD. Now wherever you get this QC as QD, then you can make that also as that QA QB also as marked. Now let us see what that Q3 Q4. Suppose if you go back to Q0 Q3. Now what is Q0 Q3? Now let us check where you get Q1 Q5 or Q2 Q5, because these are what? Newly marked pairs. Now wherever you get them as QC QD, you can make QA QB also as what? Marked pair. Now Q0, what is that still marked? Q0 Q3. Q0 Q3. What is delta of Q0 0, delta of Q3 0, delta of Q0 1, delta of Q3 1. Delta of Q0 0 is what? Q0 0 is Q1, Q20 is what? Q20 is Q4. Q00 Q1, Q30 is Q5. It is Q1 Q5. See, now that newly marked pair is what? Now the newly marked pair is Q1 Q5. So we can make this Q0 Q3 also as marked pair. So we can put tick, double tick over there. Next, what about that Q0 Q4? Let us check Q0 Q4 again. Q0 Q4. Delta of Q0 0, delta of Q4 0. Similarly, delta of Q0 1, delta of Q4 1. Q0 0 is Q1, delta of Q4 0 is Q5. So we have got Q1 Q5. Q0 1 is Q2, Q4 1 is Q5. That is Q2 Q5. See, Q1 Q5 and Q2 Q5 are what? The newly marked pairs. So since we get them, so we can make this Q3 Q4 also as what? Newly marked pair. So now we can also add Q0 Q3, Q0 Q4 also in this newly marked pairs list, right? So now finally the unmarked pairs are what? Q1 Q2, right? Why I am concluding that Q1 Q2? Let us check back again. Let us check whether we are reaching to any newly marked pair at least or not. If we are not getting newly marked pair, means still that is remains unmarked. What is that? We need to check now. That is Q1 Q2, right? Now Q1 Q2, delta of Q1 0, delta of Q1 0, delta of Q2 0, delta of Q1 1, delta of Q2 1. What is Q1 0? Q1 0 is Q3, Q2 0 is Q4, Q1 1 is Q4, Q2 1 is Q3. That is Q3 Q4 only. What about that Q3 Q4 status? Q3 Q4 is still unmarked, so you cannot make this Q1 Q2 as marked, so still it is unmarked. So Q3 Q4 also still unmarked. So finally the unmarked pairs are Q1 Q2 and Q3 Q4, right? So after all these steps, now we are also making some, but still what are the unmarked pairs? These two, Q1 Q2 and Q3 Q4, these are still unmarked pairs. Now we can make this unmarked pairs into what? One state, that Q1 Q2 as one state and Q3 Q4 as another state, right? So now we have to make them as one state now. So when you write them as one state, when you reconstruct it, then we can reconstruct the DFA, the given DFA like this, right? What is the DFA? Earlier we have Q0, Q1 as final state, Q2 as another final state, Q3 Q4 are non-final states, Q5 is another final states. Now Q0 with 0 we can reach this, 1 we reach this, Q1 with 0 we can reach Q3, 1 we can reach Q4, Q2 with 0 we can reach Q4, with 1 we can reach Q3, with 0 1 we can reach Q5, with 0 1 we can reach Q5, with 0 1 we can reach Q5. This is what that initial complex DFA. Now that DFA is converted into this minimized DFA, right? So we made that Q1 Q2 as one state and Q3 Q4 as one state according by that Myhill-Nerode theorem. So now Q0 to 0 1, if you see Q0 to 0 1, we are reaching to where? Q1 Q2. So we make it Q1 Q2 as one state. So that's why we are connecting 0 1 from Q0 with Q1 Q2. And Q1 Q2, now it is one state, Q1 Q2 with 0 1, where we are reaching to Q3 Q4. So we are at Q3 Q4, and Q3 Q4 to 0 1 we are reaching to Q5, and Q5 to 0 1 we are reaching to Q5. So this is that minimized DFA. Now we have reduced that 6 states into what? 4 states. That is how we are saying that this is that minimization of DFA by using Myhill-Nerode theorem. So this is the transition table for this minimization of DFA. Thank you all.